Good afternoon from the beautiful Bellagio Hotel in Las Vegas. Welcome to day 3 of our Las Vegas adventures. Let's go see what we can get into. Today's first adventure is going to take us to the Neon Museum. Think of it as kind of a graveyard for classic Vegas, or a boneyard, if you will. Now there's no filming of video allowed in the Neon Museum. However, you can shoot still pictures, which we'll do in a little montage for you. That is going to do it for us at the Neon Museum. There's a lot of awesomeness in there. so much awesomeness. All right, our next stop is about 1.5 miles away from the Neon Museum, and it brings us up past East Fremont Street, where we were last night. I walked by the Paradise Wedding Chapel. I felt this was vlog-worthy. All right, I arrived at our second destination here, Zak Bagans Haunted Museum. If you guys are not familiar with Zak Bagans, he is from the Travel Channel show Ghost Adventures, as well as a recent movie, The Demon House. Amazing documentary, super scary. But what Zak has done here is basically curate some amazing haunted artifacts from places that he's explored and put them all under one roof. What could go wrong with that? Now I will say there's no photos or video allowed inside of this museum. But we're gonna take a look around and tell you what we think. I am honestly really genuinely scared. This may be the last video that I'm able to shoot at the museum. I'm just hoping it's not the last video I'm able to shoot altogether. 666. This is it. This is it. You can see the lobby. You can't see anything else. I am slightly terrified.
The youngest child literally walked off several witnesses present.
Gypsy Grandma. Look who is here. Josh Hutcherson, Teller, Travis Barker.
A lot of the tour guides that do work at the museum do not.
Jonathan Davis. Kendra Wilkerson. Post Malone, my homie. Devil's Rejects. We're about to go in. The heartbeat is 128 at this point. Alright, so I wrapped up with the Haunted Museum. And it's a good 3 hours since the time that I got here. I think the tour is probably like 1.5 hours or longer. I am a little out of breath and a little bit of pain in my stomach or area, but I'm gonna give a full review when I get back to the hotel. All right, back in the hotel room after meandering a bit over towards Old Vegas, and just want to give some thoughts on Zak Bagans' Haunted Museum. I was really looking forward to going to that museum. It was the #1 thing on my list to do outside of any work-related things on this trip. That said, I know there's inevitably going to be people that post comments that say, why don't you take pictures, why don't you take video? There is absolutely no pictures or video allowed in that house whatsoever. There are a couple of videos on YouTube that media did when the museum initially opened, and it was in some specific rooms. And I can completely understand why they don't want you to take photos or video, because they don't want you to spoil it for somebody else, as well as I don't know if the experience translates to what would be captured in the video. So here's a few thoughts in my review. One, the staff at the museum, both outside and at the ticket booth, and you kind of get handed off from section to section within the house, they were all phenomenal. They were all well versed to answer questions, extremely friendly. I thought the staff was top notch. That said, to get into the museum, there is a lot of waiting, and I'm not sure if I went at a really popular time, but I got there about maybe an hour or so after the museum opened, and they said you kind of got to queue up in one line on one side of the building, and then you get your waiver and sign and wait in another line, and that line takes like maybe another 20 to 40 minutes, and then you get into the foyer area after you get your ticket to the event, and that's like another 20 plus minutes or so. So there is a lot of waiting, but the tour itself is very long as well. I think the tour probably went for about 1.5 hours or so. And so the museum is actually built in, I believe, the oldest mansion in Las Vegas. And after the mansion was unoccupied for a period of time from the original owners that had passed away, there was a lull of time where nobody was occupying that area, and folks were breaking into the house and going in the basement and performing satanic rituals. There was a law firm, I believe the Bar Association of Nevada, that occupied the building next, and the staff that were there would not go in the basement unless they were going in the basement in groups. They actually lined the stairwell to the basement in kosher salt. Now, there are a lot of creepy things in this museum. I think there's 30 rooms altogether, and of the 30 rooms you visit, I believe 25 of those rooms. So the tour is long. There's a lot of items to see. There's a lot of documentation that go with some of the items too that you can't really spend enough time viewing. So some of the items that I really wanted to look at, probably spend a lot of time looking at, you just simply can't. And if you could, it would probably make the line that much longer outside. Now, to me, there's 4 like hallmark or really key items that you're gonna want to focus in on in your trip. One is the Bela Lugosi mirror, which was formerly owned by Bela Lugosi and used, I believe, when he was scrying and putting on makeup. 2 is the Dybbuk box. 3 is Peggy the doll's room. And 4 is the stairwell and dirt that was in the basement of the demon house. Now, I should mention that this tour is definitely not for kids, and you have the ability for each of these items to opt out of wanting to see the specific item. You can wait in the hallway and not participate. No one in my group didn't do at least the last 3 items. The first item with Bela Lugosi's mirror, some folks did not want to look into the mirror. So with Bela Lugosi's mirror, it's initially covered up when you go in the room, and then you have the opportunity to stand there and look and stare inside of it. And there have been folks that have stared inside the mirror and had scratches appear down their back or feel faint and hit their head. I will say there were a bunch of items and experiences in this house or museum that genuinely affected me. I felt dizzy a couple of times, or faint. Even right now, as I'm speaking about it, I still feel a little bit off. I will say that when we got to like Peggy the doll, I had a sharp pain, and it didn't feel like, like heart pain or anything. It felt like somebody was poking me here, and I kind of had the same type of feeling with Bela Lugosi's mirror staring into it as well. So the Bela Lugosi mirror, there was nothing like scratches running down my back or anything. It was extremely creepy to look into the mirror. You get a few seconds to do so. I felt kind of short of breath and just kind of off balance or kilter looking into the mirror. So it was a very awkward experience for just looking at a stationary item. The Dybbuk box, for folks that don't know the history of that, it's a box that dates back to Nazi era concentration camps, I believe. It was like a wine box that is said to have been encased a demon or maleficent spirit within the box. It was said to never be opened. Anyone that has opened it in the past has experienced either dying shortly afterwards or some type of tragic occurrence. There's a story recently when Post Malone visited Zak, and I believe Zak opened the box, but Post Malone was touching Zak at that point, and since that time has had plane issues, traveling issues, car issues, etc., and a string of bad luck. I didn't get that feeling with the Dybbuk box. It's really weird to be in that room. The host or your tour guide leaves the room. You can spend as much time as you want looking at the artifact. It is encased in like a lucite type box as well, so you can't touch the item. You couldn't open the item if you wanted to, but extremely creepy to look at. Just a very ominous feeling within that room. Peggy the doll was another really awkward experience. You go into the room. They've said that they have had some really big activity around Peggy the doll lately, and Peggy the doll is known that it could possess you. There's been a person that's gone into that room, looked into the eyes of Peggy, and suffered a heart attack shortly thereafter. They have a spirit box hooked up in the room, so when the doors close, you can hear all this commotion going on in the room. Basically, the spirit box is just basically picking up the activity, that you normally wouldn't be able to hear with just your regular hearing, and it's kind of a basic static. But when you go in the room, they encourage you to say hello or talk to it. And as folks were in the room, we were getting some ridiculous responses on the spirit box. Things, you know, like almost like a growling type noise, or just howl type thing, and a really deep foreboding noise that I didn't want it to be in the room all that long. You know, I spent time looking at the doll. I felt really awkward. I felt very much pressure, and like I said, kind of like almost like a point or a jab to you know, on the chest. Very, very, very creepy, and not creepy like Halloween Horror Nights type creepy or Netherworld type creepy. It's difficult to explain. The last really big ticket thing that they have on the tour is related to the Demon House, which was an incredible documentary. If you guys have not seen it yet, I would encourage you guys to check it out. I think it's streaming on Amazon Prime, or you could probably pick it up on iTunes or things like that. But it's basically a house that, you know, and I know folks are going to look at this and say that's it's a crock of shit. There's no way that this stuff happened. But the Demon House itself was in Gary, Indiana, is documented both in police records, child service protection records, and in church records, where they performed exorcisms on the people that were affected in the house. Zak Bagans had bought the house, tried to make a documentary, and I think it took years for the documentary to be made because the production crew were getting affected. And by affected, I mean ending up in the hospital with organs failing, people that appear to be like possessed, etc. But they've demolished the house. The only thing that they kept from the house, and if you watch the documentary, that you'll know what I'm talking about, is the stairwell to the basement and the dirt that's under the stairs. At the end of the documentary, you see where they're gathering all the dirt and putting it in kind of like 5-gallon buckets to transport, and it's at the end of the tour for the Haunted Museum, as well as the artifacts that were found under the stairs. I wasn't impacted there. I was extremely nervous after seeing the documentary about not wanting to touch anything, or not, I'll be quite honest, not even wanting to look at anything all that long. Really, really super creepy after seeing that documentary, and we had just watched that like a week ago. I'm getting creeped out even thinking about it now. Really, really crazy stuff. Now there's some other exhibits throughout the house. Obviously it's 25 rooms, and I'm not going to spoil everything for everybody. There's a room that's dedicated to serial killers with an absolutely ridiculous amount of stuff in there, from like Gacy and Manson and stuff like that. And speaking of Manson, there's a thing, trying to even think of saying it, I mean, it's basically the Haunted Museum is the final resting place for Charles Manson. They have his ashes, his gown that he wore when he died, as well as his toe tag. They have, you know, I think like teeth from him and hair from him. It's something else. It was a really incredible experience to go through and see everything. I'll be honest, going in, I was very nervous about, you know, either spirits attaching or doing something. And it sounds crazy saying this, and I know there's going to be a bunch of people that watch this and think that stuff isn't real or anything else. But you know, I believe, and there's obviously, I think there's probably a good chunk of people that do believe. But really, really intense time, and an excellent place to check out if you're into that type of stuff, and you're in Vegas. So in any event, back to the video. Sorry for the wonky cut in the video here, but where I did feel like I was being poked in the chest, I went back to the bathroom, took off my shirt and everything, and this is what it looks like. I apologize for the slight man boobage in the area, but that's pretty crazy. I was not itchy. I did not scratch myself. So we've got about a half a mile to walk for our next stop of our tour. All right, so we're walking down Las Vegas Boulevard, right past Kyle Gas Street, and lo and behold, It's the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop. Right next to it, world famous Rick's Dine-In. This is the pawn shop home to Rick, Corey, Chun-Li, and sadly, formerly the old man. Right next to it's a whole little complex pawn stores have all bought. I've always seen where they say that there's giant lines to get in here. Here's the pawn window, and there's no line to get in. So here are all the restaurants and places owned by the folks from the pawn store. Rick's Picks up top. He bartends there 8 to 11 on the weekends, but they're not around here now. The pawn shop was much smaller than I thought it was going to be. But now, as we're walking back towards Fremont, check it out, Graceland Wedding Chapel. Oh, somebody just got married. John Bon Jovi was married here. You can get married by Elvis. Right here. Alright, I made my way back down to Fremont Street for one reason alone. I'll let you guys give you a hint. It's White Castle. Oh my god, it was so good. I got to shoot video of this stuff though. I only took a picture. This is what I ate. That was amazing. Oh, we're just in time for the light show. Fremont Street. We're gonna get out of here. Alright, that's gonna do it for us for day 3 in Vegas. Thank you very much for coming along. Thank you very much for all of your likes and your comments and your subscriptions. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Have a great night. We'll see you guys.